this meeting to order. This is the regular school board meeting of the Northfield Public Schools. It is Monday, February 24th, 7 p.m. Dr. Richardson, we had a few items in our table file.
Yes, in your table file you're going to find the RTI presentation, which has some additional handouts and another PowerPoint presentation. They've got lots of stuff to share with us tonight. We've also got several personnel items, including appointments, increase, decrease, and change in assignments, and leave of absence, and also a request in the items for information for closed negotiation strategy session following the board meeting on March the 10th.
All right. If there's no objection, we will add these items to the agenda as we move forward. All right. Ready to move on to public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the community to address the board. Is there anyone here who wishes to address the board? All right. Approval of the minutes. Board members, you have in your packets the minutes from the last school board meeting on Monday, February 10th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Carrie, seconded by Noel. All those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Minutes are approved. Announcements and recognition.
Okay, I have several announcements tonight. First of all, congratulations to school board member Rob Hardy and two other adult supervisors, advisors to the Northfield Skateboard Coalition. They received the Healthy Community Initiative Making a Difference Award for January-February. The award celebrates groups and individuals in the community that had a positive influence on Northfield youth. Rob, along with Cecilia, and help me with the last name, Rob. Cornejo and Jane McWilliams have regularly volunteered their time during the past 2 years helping youth from the Skateboard Coalition work toward the goal of building a permanent skate park in Northfield. The Parks and Recreation Board has selected the Old Memorial Park as the location, and the project is currently in its design phase. Also on February 11th, 78th grade students participated in the Southeast Minnesota Regional Spelling Bee. Local champion speller Hannah Paz and finalists Elijah Lear and Joseph Peshta represented the Northfield School District. Hannah earned a 5th place trophy, qualified for the final round that will be held in Rochester tomorrow. The winner of the final regional bee will earn a trip to the Scripps National Spelling Bee in Washington, D.C. Also, our Raider gymnastics team placed second at state, even though we had to do some pretty nifty adjustments of transportation times and whatever to get everybody where they needed to be. But they were able to get there. Amazing performance over the weekend. Northfield High School junior Bailey DuPay won her second consecutive all-around championship in the individual competition. Also, our Raider wrestling team will have 2 student athletes competing at the state meet. Seniors Carson Canaday and Sam Minsky both qualified to wrestle at state. Also, our Gator boys swim and dive team will be sending all 3 relays, a number of individuals to the state swim meet as well. Again, congratulations to all of these students and to all of our winter activity participants for competing and participating with class throughout the season. Also, we'd like to congratulate, and some of you hopefully got a chance to check it out. We currently have the Northfield Middle School is teaming up with the high school to host the first ever student-led 9th grade transition conferences from 4 to 8 o'clock p.m. here at the high school tonight. And many supporting activities are being offered. I still am waiting to check out my QRL to see Ray Coudre's presentation on math options. If you notice, though, the flow chart all by itself, if you can get to the flow chart, you could be a math student, I think, and do well. So again, it's going very well from what Jeff is telling me right now. He believes they have in excess of 90% of the parents and students are here tonight doing the conferences, and they're doing 2 pieces. They're doing a student-led portion that's in the upper cafeteria, and then a parent presentation in the auditorium, and then they're moving them back and forth between the activities where they get a chance to stop and talk and meet with high school staff, see all of the different kinds of programs that are available, and to get an idea of what not only required and elective classes are, but also to get the lowdown on what it's like to be a high school student. So I think that's going to be really positive. Also would like to announce that on March 21st, Congressman John Klein will be visiting the high school and will be coming to have a discussion on special education funding and program issues. And so we're going to ask a group of staff and parents to join us to meet with Congressman Klein to talk about the issues that are involved with not only funding special education but also providing programming needs. So again, that's coming up on Friday the 21st from 10 to 11:30. So that would be something that if board members are interested in joining us, you would be able to do so. Okay, that's all the announcements I have at this time.
All right. Other announcements or recognition? No? All right. We are ready to move on to our first item for discussion or report, which I believe is our response to intervention presentation. Is that Mary?
I'm starting.
Okay.
But I won't be here long. So thank you for inviting us to present this evening, and we're going to present in 3 parts. The first section will be the response to intervention in the elementary schools, and that will be presented by our 6 RTI coaches. The second section will cover the positive behavior intervention supports in the middle school, high school, and area learning center. And then Mr. Hillman will conclude with some comments about future staffing. And we'll take questions at the end of each section. So let us begin with the RTI coaches from the elementary.
Good evening. I'm Heather Ryden, and on behalf of my colleagues and our director, Mary Hansen, I'd like to thank you for having us here tonight. It's always a privilege for us to share with you what we've been up to and to receive your questions and your feedback, so we appreciate the opportunity. All 6 of the elementary RTI coaches are here tonight, and we'll be giving you a snapshot of where we've been in the RTI process for the past couple of years, as well as how we hope to move forward in the future. So we have Connie Nelson and Hope Langston are our RTI coaches at Bridgewater. Tanya Will and Becky Gainey are at Sibley, and Diane Torbenson and I are at Greenville Park. As we've reflected on the implementation of RTI in our district, we've noted that there has been a ripple effect that has impacted students and teachers across the district in many different ways. And our role is extremely dynamic as we collaborate with staff members, analyze and share data, implement interventions, provide training, and really try to be as supportive as we possibly can be of the teaching and the learning process. And we believe this is part of a shift that has the potential to continue to ripple and to have a far-reaching positive effect. So, I'd like to provide a framework for tonight's presentation. First of all, our constant focus is always on student learning. That's why we're here. The ultimate goal of everything we do is to help students learn and realize their potential. Tanya and Hope will be sharing data and information on this topic. And in order to support student learning, we need to support our teachers. And our teachers deserve a lot of credit for the way they've embraced new strategies and the way they've collaborated with us and with each other. Becky will be sharing some of the strategies that we've implemented this year and last to support teachers as they work really hard to meet the needs of student learning in their classrooms every day. And all of this starts at the district level as we come together around a common vision and as we develop strategies and implement systems of support for both teachers and students. And Connie will be presenting on this first, and then we'll move to teacher support and then to student learning. In addition, Diane is going to talk about some of the challenges that we faced the past couple of years, as well as some of the things that are still a work in progress for us and what our hopes for the future as well. And finally, we want to emphasize that The backdrop for this presentation, and really the premise of RTI, is the belief that all students can learn at high levels. And we take our roles very seriously in cultivating a culture that holds this belief.
You'll have to bear with me. I only have 2 slides, but I'm going to be doing a lot of clicking. Okay, first one. Okay, district impact. When we first began the RTI process many, many years ago, and then hired, 2 coaches were hired at each building a year and a half ago, we realized that there needed to be more consistency among the 3 buildings. So that was a primary goal of ours during our first year. So elementary school consistency. How are we going to achieve this? Well, with 2 coaches at each of our elementary buildings, we realized that we needed to be collaborating. The 6 of us would need to be getting together on a regular basis. So that's what happens at our Wednesday PLC. And we meet every Wednesday on a regular basis at Longfellow School at 11:15. And we began having, I guess, what you'd call our own PLC of sorts. Although I have to say that our PLC oftentimes lasts 3 hours or more. One of the things that we continue to do is to build trust and also connections among our staffs. And by meeting with individual teachers and PLCs at our buildings, we continue to work on building this trust. And judging by the number of teachers that seek out our help on a daily basis, we feel that we have come a long way since day 1 of RTI implementation. As you are probably aware, in November we had our first joint PLC, and district grade levels met at Bridgewater. Teachers collaboratively brainstormed the definitions of professional learning communities. And then they took a look at their own belief systems around the theme, all children can learn. District reflection partners were assigned to each teacher, and then the idea was that that would promote some collegiality among the buildings. By keeping things on a very positive note, I think most teachers came away feeling good about common practices and expectations in the district. And this is where our big 4 come into play. I better put glasses on for this one. Okay. In addition to all the aforementioned responsibilities, we would probably agree that these 4 items have been our top priorities both last year and this year. Before asking teachers to implement interventions with their students, we realized that we really needed to try them out ourselves. There were some kinks that needed to be worked out, and we needed to make some adjustments. But we now feel that we have a solid bank of standard protocol interventions to share with teachers. These will always be a work in progress as we continue to research both reading and math interventions. SST, our student support team process, has also evolved over time. Pat Quinn, who's known as the RTI guy, has helped us immensely. We've watched webinars, we've had him in our district. He was just here in January, and he's really helped us with our 6-step SST process, and we use this common process at each of our buildings. And then we have electronic forms that are available in our SST shared folders. RSG stands for Ready, Set, Go Day. And this initiative was successfully kicked off last August. And we're in the process of tweaking it a bit to make it more accessible to working parents and also to gather more teacher input. So with teachers, we will be determining which assessments will be given at each grade level throughout the district. And this has already been set for this coming August. Assessments. The major assessments are the same throughout the district. You're familiar with MAP and MCAs. Dibbles, reading, and math are considered our universal screeners. BAS, in case you're not tired of acronyms yet. We do really need a dictionary or glossary of these, I think. But BASS is our new benchmark assessment system, which is a Fontes and Pinnell publisher, and that helps teachers to match appropriate books with their students. Okay, we know there will always be differences among the three buildings, but we feel we've taken some necessary strides to do less comparing and more collaborating. Our second joint PLC took place in February, and again we felt this was a big step towards unifying our elementary staff, and we look forward to our final PLC in May. We started out last year by looking at individual interventions, but we realized that we needed to really focus on our core instruction and also our Tier 2 interventions. So our District Language Arts Curriculum Committee saw a need for a program to help address word study. And so the district this last fall purchased Words Their Way. And this is now being used in all three elementary buildings. Pat Quinn also addressed Tier 1 at our January workshop, which was titled Strengthening the Core Instruction. Tier 2 needs are addressed by our title staff, by reading and math support teachers, and by flexible grouping in each of the buildings. Level literacy instruction, or LLI, was purchased this year, as was math elevations. Those are both being used at all three buildings. Individual interventions are happening with our volunteers, and you'll hear more about that on another slide. And also we have reading and math core tutors, our school psychologists, our social workers, and classroom teachers. As RTI coaches, we train those doing the academic interventions, whereas behavior interventions are usually addressed by our psychs and social workers. At the top of the pyramid would be our special education. And just to give you a little bit of a update on that, in 2011-2012, we had 43 initial referrals to special education. In 2012-13, which was our first year of RTI, we had 34 referrals. And to date this year, we've had 25 referrals. And I'm sure that our special education department can probably fill you in on more of that data if you're interested. So I think we're ready to move on.
Oh, wait, I forgot your triangle here. There's a triangle.
One more.
One more.
Sorry, that's all right. Okay, one more thing. And as you can see, response to intervention just runs the gamut of all three of those views. All right.
I'm going to talk about the teacher support part of the presentation. I love this quote. It says, "I'm first a teacher. My job hasn't changed, but my audience has. Now I teach teachers to use strategies and routines. My job is still to impact kids, but now I do it by helping teachers be as focused and effective as they can be." All RTI coaches come from a classroom teacher background, and we feel a great responsibility in supporting teachers in their work. Supporting teachers in this paradigm shift is what will sustain RTI. RTI is about offering our best instruction to all students, and this is nothing new to our teachers. It starts with a strong core curriculum, and for those students who struggle with the core, we need to try something different, track the progress, and then make decisions about interventions for those kids who struggle. The shift comes in the tracking and trying something different. There are a few different ways we've been helping teachers make this shift, and we will share them here with you. Professional development. We take this part of our jobs pretty seriously and want to make the most of the time we have with teachers and ensure that they are getting the most valuable information. We've had two presenters this year who have knocked it out of the park. Danielle Theis presented some mental health information that made us take a look at some of our students in a different light and see the challenges many children face. And as Connie mentioned, Pat Quinn, we are big fans. He is a driving force behind a lot of what we are doing with RTI in Northfield. In January, he came to Northfield and presented RTI to the entire elementary staff in a way that was practical and uncomplicated. Teachers appreciated hearing from a real classroom teacher who shared his small things that make a big difference. In our buildings, the RTI coaches have taken the lead on our staff development in each building and have tailored it based on the needs of each staff. Cognitive coaching. All 6 RTI coaches have been trained in cognitive coaching. We rely on this training to help teachers formally through 3 types of coaching sessions: planning, reflection, and problem solving. Informally, we use it every day to help teachers mediate their thinking in different situations in their teaching and in student learning. We know the importance of making connections with teachers by building trust and supporting them in the RTI process. We often tell teachers to keep what they know works for kids and think about an area that could be tweaked. We try to work alongside them as coaches rather than being the experts. We appreciate all of the work they do for their students every day, and we try to make smart decisions with teachers and student learning at the forefront. Pat Quinn introduced the idea of peer observations, which we plan to move forward with. This allows teachers to learn from each other by spending time in each other's classrooms or by having a peer watch them and focus on one aspect of their teaching to help improve their core instruction. Data review and response. We're really trying to help teachers look at their data and use it to inform their teaching. We do this through data retreats and by supporting them in their PLCs and by helping them become more familiar with our main data warehouse, Viewpoint, as well as Dibbles.net, which houses our Dibbles data. A few of us, actually many of us now, are attending a Viewpoint conference in St. Cloud this week to help us extend our knowledge and use of the data on Viewpoint. And interventions. We continue to refine our work in helping teachers match interventions to students, narrowing in on possible problems and choosing an intervention that fits. The shift comes in pinpointing the problem, using an intervention to solve the problem, tracking the data, and then making decisions based on the data. We decided to compile our intervention numbers to show the impact of RTI, and I think it is safe to say that we were all surprised and are pretty proud of these numbers. Up to date, 893 interventions have taken place since 2012. 93% of classroom teachers are involved in interventions. And 120 additional interventionists have been trained to do interventions. These are primarily volunteers through Accelerate Northfield, college students from the Reads and Counts programs, and educational assistants.
As we support learning, we do review quite a bit of data, starting with the overall picture. And here you can see 3 benchmark assessments that reveal results in reading. Each of the test results shows just a slightly different amount of students that would benefit from intervention. In general, we're looking for our core curriculum instruction meeting the needs of 80% of the students. This shows that we are shy of that 80% mark as a district, meeting benchmark goals as follows: 69% if we use Dibbles, 72% using MAP, and 66% according to MCA scores. We continue to support teachers in strengthening their core instruction so we can move these numbers more toward the ideal of 80%, and as this happens, fewer students would require intervention. Similar results are also shown in the area of MAP, with 75% meeting benchmark according to Dibbles, 79% according to MAP, and 72% according to the MCA. While triangulating data is useful, we also wrestle with the issue of overassessment. So as a result, we have recently tapped into the knowledge of the Carleton statistics experts, and we appreciate the precision and depth of their study as we pair this with the information that we glean from the various assessments that we give. Through this partnership, we hope to better understand the implications of the different assessments and make smart decisions regarding the testing in our district. Getting an overall view is an important place to start, but the heart of what we examine is really individual student learning. We're no longer operating from the average, but are considering the progress of each child one student at a time. Right now I'm going to take you through a math case study to further understand how we examine the learning of an individual in order to plan for the most effective instruction. At the right, you can see this student's MCA and OLPA scores. The OLPA scores are the practice MCAs, this line right here indicates the benchmark goal of 50. If it was a third grader, the score would be 350 they're aiming for, fourth grade 450, and fifth grade 550. The arrows indicate the MCA scores, the scores that will be measured by the state. As you can see, this student was just shy of reaching proficiency in third grade and in fourth grade, but just recently passed the benchmark, meeting proficiency on the last OLPA taken just a few weeks ago. This is truly a celebration story. As we look deeper into the instructional decisions impacting this progress, we need to understand the strand data. This is where we really pick things apart. Here you can see the strands tracked across the years. We have numbers and operations, that's what it would look like, and then we have algebra and geometry and data. In third grade, the student did receive some extra help on occasion from volunteers and often required with reteaching within the classroom. In fourth grade, the standards changed and her score was back in the 30s, ready to learn new fourth grade material. This was also the first year of RTI. When the second OLPA showed no significant growth in the specific strand of numbers and operations, we were concerned and put into effect a fact fluency intervention for addition and subtraction. We also noticed that there was a flat line in the area of geometry and incorporated a geometry vocabulary intervention that provided the needed repetition that she required. You'll notice that right after that mark, there was an increase in both of those strands. However, not quite enough to meet the mark. When fifth grade came around, the pattern of regression continued, but not to the same degree. Plus, we intervened right away. She experienced a fact fluency intervention in multiplication and received skill-specific support through Math Core in a 2-to-1 student-to-teacher setting. As you can see, she recently skyrocketed. She's received 4 intentional interventions in math over the course of 2 years. These interventions, coupled with strong core teaching and intentional flexible grouping, has truly made a difference for this child. This is a celebration story, but it takes time.
One of the important tasks we have as an RTI team is to continually assess the impact of the interventions and how they are translating to other measures of student achievement. A student may be showing progress in an individual intervention, but our goal is that same student would show increasing success on other measures of achievement like the MCA or another such test. Last year, we compared the MCA practice test growth of students receiving targeted interventions, we want the laser, students receiving targeted math interventions and compared their growth with their peers. What we found is that these students grew an average of slightly more than 5 points beyond what their peers did. So we knew that this approach to math interventions was successful and that we would continue to do so. the big picture view of the RTI process and its translation in actual student achievement data is an important aspect of our coaching role. This is a reading case study, and with individual students, we work in tandem with the teacher to monitor growth. This is an example of a student who has been part of the intervention process since 2nd grade. She came to our school in the beginning of 2nd grade reading 1 year below grade level. And you can see actually her, I keep hitting the wrong one. Sorry guys. Her growth right here is her 1st grade, and then the line continuing on up through the middle of 3rd grade. So we've been tracking this child's reading growth since she arrived with us, but using also her historical data from her old school. Using multiple measures of growth, text level, and then DIBELS, phonics knowledge, and reading fluency, we began tracking this student's progress and growth over time. The teaching team and RTI coaches switched interventions where necessary, and you will see that on our DIBELS tracking system, these blue lines represent the intervention starting points, which is a nice tool for the teachers to use, because you can easily see that at this point where we weren't seeing the rate of growth that we wanted in phonics knowledge, we switched the intervention, and you can see that the growth trend increased. The exciting thing is that when this student began 3rd grade, again here this is 3rd grade, started well below the benchmark, and with an intervention put in place early on in the year, has continued to grow on their trend line. Are they where we want her to be yet? No. But we know that she now has come to a point where she can qualify for reading corps, which means she's just slightly below grade level. And in fact, her text level is where we want it to be, and we know that her problem right now is the rate at which she reads, which is measured by this DIBELS oral reading fluency. So narrowing the gap to grade level performance is sometimes a multi-year process. But by using the data and monitoring progress, we continue to get kids to where they need to be. We are extremely fortunate in Northfield to have a large number of volunteers. This year we specified certain volunteers as RTI tutors and trained them in the delivery of certain interventions. The body that is providing us with these tutors is Accelerate Northfield, and we know that some interventions are more effective when delivered by a teacher, but others can be administered by trained volunteers with monitoring by teachers and coaches. With the help of Fritz, Marnie, and Rachel, we began to look at the impact of this RTI Accelerate Northfield partnership this year. And there was some exciting data that we found. So if you look at this graph, we are looking at the % improvement from their fall to winter benchmark. And the Accelerate Northfield kids, those receiving interventions from specifically trained volunteers, grew at a much faster rate than their peers. And we're really proud of that. The other thing we looked at is the gap. Did we reduce the gap from fall to winter? And it's very clear that across all 3 schools, where their gap was in the darker blue at the beginning of the year with the fall benchmark, they had come much closer to closing the gap at the winter benchmark. Again, because we want to measure the impact of our programs on student achievement, we continue to look at these big picture comparisons to see that kids are making progress and what we're doing is having an impact on their growth. The number of students seen by RTI tutors in this first year of this program was a little over 75, and we think that the program has done great things in our schools.
And I'm going to put it all together with some closing remarks. Our next slide is on challenges. And although we feel really good about all we've accomplished as RTI coaches, we do face challenges as well. And some of the things I'm going to talk about, you've heard through the presentation, and like everything, there's there's good in it, and then there are challenges in some of the same things. The first is managing of essential building tasks. Much of our time is spent training our interventionists, our teachers, our support staff, our EAs, and some of our volunteers in how to do the reading and math interventions. We also spend time preparing the intervention materials and then setting up systems so that those materials and directions can be easily accessible to others, as well as monitoring and changing our interventions as needed. Yet there are things that just have to be done in the building, and they vary from building to building, but we might be found helping in a classroom or taking care of a student need or helping with a special event. A second challenge is the coordination of other services. We've been coordinating services such as Minnesota Reading and Math Corps as the internal coaches. We've also helped with targeted services and kind of helping to bring some RTI into the Summer Plus program coming up. We've also helped a lot, as you heard, through with the Accelerate Northfield volunteers, as well as guiding our Title I and our special ed staff in terms of interventions. So the coordination of that, or keeping all the balls in the air with that, can be kind of challenging at times. We are so appreciative of these people and the services, yet they need ongoing support. Our third one down here is the development of measurable impact. And basically, we want to know, is RTI working? And we want to make sure what we're doing is mattering to our students and if it's working in the long term. So we ask ourselves that question very often, and we're keeping an eye on that. Next is assessment coordinator responsibilities. As RTI coaches, we are the school assessment coordinators. We're busy with the MCA, the MAP, and the DIBELS assessment, as well as our text leveling assessment Connie had referred to called BASS. The main responsibilities come in preparing the materials, scheduling, communicating testing information with staff, assisting in the computer lab for our MAP and our MCA, troubleshooting as issues arise, and making sure that accommodations are honored. Next on the list is new teacher information and training. We see a need to keep our new staff informed throughout the school year, so we often set up special meetings to provide information and answer questions that they have. This has been a great way to connect with our new staff and build on our relationships with them. We'd like to help them as needed and provide direction prior to the events such as conferences, benchmark assessing, report card grading, and other timely things in the buildings. And our last on the list is ease of data accessibility. Currently, I think you've heard this before, I think Becky was referring to it. Currently, teachers have to go to multiple websites to get their data. It would be so much better if all the data could be housed in one location. Much of our data is found on the district's Viewpoint site, yet not all the data can be entered into Viewpoint, such as DIBELS isn't yet able to be in there. Also, we need to wait for the testing windows to close before the data is entered. And in today's today's society, we want our answers and our results right now. Well, NWEA is our MAP website that we go to, and the MDE is the Minnesota Department of Education, gives us our information on MCA, and that OPA, which is the practice math MCA test. They report the results right away, and the teachers as well as the coaches and building principals, I think, are anxious to see the results. So we go to those sites along with Viewpoint, and we do go to the dibbles.net site often to find that data. So it'd be great if all that would be in one location. Those are some of our challenges, and now we'd like to look ahead, and if we think of our vision as our work in progress. In terms of this, we're looking ahead, and we see more work that has to be done, and we're excited to take these things on and accomplish them. First and foremost, at the bottom you see the RTI maintaining our current practices. We really we feel good about all that we've done as RTI coaches in this year and a half, and we want to keep providing this support. And then as we look ahead, we'd like to broaden our view to address all learners, possibly changing our name from RTI to MTSS, which is Multi-Tiered System of Supports. And that way we feel we could even better reach out to our high-end learners and address all the needs of all the learners at all the levels. Along with that, another vision is to continue support as instructional coaches. And we keep busy daily, problem solving, planning with staff members to best meet the needs of our students. We want to make sure that much of our time is devoted to this important coaching service. We look forward to more cognitive coaching opportunities as well, now that all 6 of us have that training. This is an exciting one. We really are looking forward to developing a website, and we believe that an RTI or an MTSS website would be widely used and extremely helpful for staff as they take on more and more responsibility with RTI and MTSS. Information, materials, and direction would be easily accessible to all on this website. We'll look to you, Matt, for some help and direction in that. And then the next vision is ongoing staff development. And you've heard this before, I think. I know Becky referred to it, possibly Connie as well. But we see it as a great need and a huge benefit to our staff. As we learn more from various workshops, webinars, and professional books, we're eager to share this information with the staff. Pat Quinn and Jim Knight are two of the workshop speakers that we've been excited about, and we'd like to share more of what they say to our staff. And last on this vision is being proactive in our coaching, and then expanding our mentorship to for the new teachers. We really want to, we think by our being proactive, we can keep our staff members engaged and involved with RTI. And in terms of the mentorship, we see this as a professional benefit for the teacher as well as the whole school district. That's exciting for us to look ahead and see those things that we could possibly take on and get more accomplished in that area. And in closing, we are asked this often, and maybe you are as well, but what do we do daily? As RTI coaches, we collaborate with staff, we review and interpret data, we work with interventions, and we support teacher and student learning. Thank you. And then we can take questions on this portion of our talk.
Anne?
Yeah. This has been great. And I would love to hear just a couple of comments about the reactions you've gotten from students, if you know how they react to receiving the RTI services, and also what kind of comments you've gotten from their parents.
I'm going to speak to the student response. Connie and I have a wall of fame in our office where kids can come and bring their graphs, which they are very, very excited about. They actually love to see their progress on the daily tracking sheet. So there's a variety of different graphs depending on the intervention, and the students will come down and bring us their graphs, and we have a little celebration. And so I think what we have found is that students are really vested in seeing their own growth, and that's a really positive part of this whole process.
That's true, and you know, you've seen some data here on the slides tonight, but also along with that, we have daily sort of tracking data that the students usually are a part of creating, and they'll use their marker and fill in their bar graph or that kind of thing, and they love doing that, and it's really exciting for us, even if it doesn't always go in the direction that we want it to go. In general, it always does trend toward the students learning what they need to learn, and those times when they don't, we can talk about that and talk about strategies for how we can help them to do a little bit better the next time. So kids are really motivated in doing that. I know Diane had a visit a few days ago where there was a student who had just a really successful intervention day, and he brought his mom in because he wanted to show her how he could read this particular passage. And he was so excited, and the mom was really thrilled, and that was just really cute for them to take the initiative to do that. And I know I've been working with some parents who feel really pleased and I think impressed to see the level of attention and detail we give to an individual child. And it also motivates them to connect with us and ask about the data and say, how is my child doing in this particular thing? And also, what can I do at home? So it's kind of developed some neat partnerships with parents who are willing to take on some responsibility of the intervention at home as well. So there are a lot of great stories that go along with that. Thanks for that question.
Thank you.
One added thing on that note is that, or another comment I have is when we maybe have a volunteer that isn't able to come in, or there's some reason that the child can't receive the intervention on a particular day, that really makes the children sad. They find us and they say, can I come? Or I've been at Bridgewater in meetings or at Simply as well, and all of the buildings, the kids are like, what? I can't work with you today? And so it does matter to them. And if it's nothing more than the attention they get, but it's specific attention targeted to their needs, and it matters in their lives.
Other questions? Julie?
I know at the elementary level, the individual students don't have the iPad, but how have you been able to use the iPad for your interventions?
Well, we have a favorite math intervention. It's called incremental rehearsal. I do it on an iPad, and I can track, I can set it up for teachers, and they can track, and I can track the progress that they're making in learning their facts fluently. The second intervention that we've used the iPad for is called Read Naturally, and that was typically a paper pencil paper pencil intervention, and it's now come out on the iPad, and we are piloting that and having really good success with that as well. There are some phonics applications that teachers will use with students on a regular basis, and they just provide a different way of presenting some material to students that they wouldn't otherwise get. So we are making as much use of the iPad as possible, and I do find that teachers are looking more and more to discover ways to use the iPad to teach specific skills. And there are some great programs that track the data for you. So we're sort of experimenting with that this year, and I look to see more and more use of the iPad in the future with that process.
Great, thank you.
John?
I think I did pretty well with the acronyms, but there were two that slipped by. So somebody could help me out with SST.
Student support team.
Student support team, and OLPA was.
Okay. OLPA is our practice math test. Do you happen to know the actual words?
He's got it.
I believe it's optional local practice assessment. Am I good?
Perfect.
Optional local practice assessment, definitely.
All right, thank you.
Carrie?
Connie, you might just share too, who is on the SST, and how does that SST operate on a normal basis?
I believe it's pretty universal at all three schools. We have our social worker, we have our school psychologist, we have our 2 RTI coaches. Our principal attends whenever possible. Let's see if I'm missing anybody else here. We do have a special ed representative at Bridgewater. I believe that's true with the other buildings. And then the classroom teacher whose student is being discussed would be attending, as well as any title support staff that works with that student. So we try to have as many vested parties as possible at those meetings. So, and then we have had a couple of times when we've actually invited a parent at a parent's request to want to know more about what's being done with their child, and so in that case there might be a parent attending. But in general we meet once a week, although we're finding that sometimes the needs cause us to meet more than once a week, so it just kind of depends. If we get backlogged because of days being called off, then we have to reschedule. So sorry about that.
Go ahead, Carrie.
Thank you. Excellent report. I really appreciated the individual case studies of the students. That's really neat to see the progress and how the intervention is actually working in the case of an individual student. I was interested in the reading study, the reading case study, where when we get to that 3rd grade year, you didn't see the summer slide between the end of 2nd grade and 3rd grade. And I'm wondering if we're starting to see parents get involved in doing interventions in the summer, or if this is part of the Summer Plus, the effort to get some of these interventions into Summer Plus. If you could just speak to that a little bit.
So we are actually doing continuing interventions at Summer Plus. This child was not at Summer Plus, but this child's parents really made a concerted effort not to continue with the intervention, but to do some activities over the summer that we had recommended. We did have a parent this past year who did come in and get trained on the intervention so that she could continue with the intervention over the summer. It was not that case study, but it certainly does raise awareness about keeping the progress going over the summer. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
One more?
And I'm not sure who this is best directed to, but I appreciate the list of the different challenges. And I'm just wondering kind of which of those are the biggest obstacle to improving student learning, and are there things that the board can do to help with that?
Well, I think when I think of the challenges, every single challenge, as I was thinking about what I wanted to say about them, they all had a positive. I mean, so I think the greatest challenge is keeping all of it going, because we really do. We're busy all day, and we could be busy all night, and we just there's more. Every time we take a step forward, there's more to be done. So I guess that's personally my greatest challenge, is keeping it all in the air. You know, you'll have some great volunteers, and then they'll say, I ran out of this, or the graph I'm at the end of the graph, or I need, and the volunteers don't know where to go to get the next graph. I'm like, oh, no problem, I'll get it. And then somebody else catches, just like every one of us, someone else catches you and there's another need. So I guess the more we do, the more we want to do. So is there anything specific we're looking for? I think hoping that the teachers we do want the teachers, they've taken on a lot. Becky's slide was 93% of the teachers are involved, and it could even be higher than that. But the teachers have embraced it. And people are in, one of our early workshops last year was, one of our speakers said, have them see who plays in your sandbox. And teachers slowly came by and wanted to learn more about RTI. Well, they're quickly coming by now, and they keep coming back, and we love that. So keeping it going is big. And we want them to take on more and more of the responsibility, yet they're busy, and it's really hard. So that would probably be our greatest challenge, is not overwhelming them, yet keeping it going.
Thank you.
Rob?
I have a question about one of the slides that Hope talked about. The one where you talk about, that talks about average growth in the OLPA 12-13, and that fifth grade students receiving interventions grew an average of 5.35 points higher than those not receiving interventions. So I'm just wondering why that is. Is that because students who don't need interventions don't need to grow as much, or is it because level 2 is more effective at producing growth than the core curriculum, or what's going on there?
I think that's a great question, and something we really looked at last year, because in the world there are far fewer math interventions than there are literacy interventions. It's just the fact of the research right now. So last year, when we started doing math interventions, we basically took a leap and identified foundational gaps in these students' math learning, and specifically targeted those skills. And we took a leap, and we wanted to make sure we knew that this was having a positive impact on their math ability. So I don't think it's that kids grew less in core. I think that these kids specifically had some gaps filled that allowed them to grow at a faster rate. That's what I attributed it to, because we saw that pretty consistently across that pool of students that we studied.
Thanks.
Other questions? I had one, and maybe this is part of the follow-on, but in terms of, so the RTI has been in place now for, this is the second year, and I know we're looking at extending it another year and looking at some sort of transition plan. But when I hear this presentation, I get really worried about a transition plan, because I see all the great things that are happening, and I see your work in progress and the vision for the future. And I don't know if this is more of a Mary question, but you don't want to think about what would things look like without the two RTI coaches, because you have this fabulous story. So I don't know. Maybe this is part of your future presentation.
You actually are the straight man
Am
for
I?
the
Okay.
next two parts presentation.
Okay.
Because that's exactly where we're going from here now, is to talk to you about thinking about what what would that transition look like, and also how do we fund that transition piece going forward? Because you're right, these people have embraced this process, they've taken it on, they've made it their own. In talking with Mary and others before, and in talking with these guys before, they've taken it far beyond, I think, what in our wildest dreams we hoped this would be over this last 18 months. In terms of really taking on all the pieces that were part of the RTI intervention process, but also taking on the staff development piece that had to occur to go forward, the coaching and support piece for teachers to take them from I wander by and look at the sandbox to I'm jumping in the sandbox and grabbing a shovel and wanting to be part of the process, to then doing kind of all the other things that have made them really important going forward. What we have to think about is what that transition looks like in year 3, and also how do we begin to support our secondary programming in terms of their MTSS and their PBIS efforts. So that's kind of what Mary and Matt are going to talk to you about next. Once we do those pieces, if you have other questions, we'll be happy to work with you on those too.
Okay. Well, thank you, RTI coaches. That was a terrific presentation.
Okay, well, we'll continue on upward through the grade levels, and we'll talk now a little bit about what's been happening at the middle school, high school, and area learning center as those sites begin their implementation of the multi-tiered systems of support. And again, that's the MTSS that you will be hearing more about as we switch over to multi-tiered systems of support. The middle school, high school, and ALC are beginning the multi-tiered systems of supports with behavior. And research has shown that improving behavior results in improved academic achievement. Last year, in fact about a year ago, we applied for a grant through the Minnesota Department of Education to be a part of Cohort 9 for the 2013 through 2015 school years. And this 2-year grant consists of 10 days of training. And so far this year, we've attended 4 days of training, 2 days in August, 2 in November, and 2 coming up here in March. Each school sends a team of people, and as part of the training on those days, they have time to plan the implementation and what they're going to take back to their school sites. Another aspect of this grant is 2 years of free access to SWIS, another acronym for you, School-Wide Information System. And this allows tracking negative behaviors by student, time, and location of the incident. And through computer analysis of this data, the trouble spots and times are quickly identified and can then be more easily remedied. The SWIS system costs $250 per year, and 2 elementary schools have also purchased this in our district to track behavior. The middle school, high school, and ALC have 2 years of free access to this, during which time they can make a determination if this is providing useful information, and then that they should go ahead and purchase this when the 2-year grant is through. This training was installed and taken place in December, so at this point we really don't have much data because it just hasn't been in place that long. And one of our other goals is to look at Skyward to see if there's something within that system that if we decide not to go with SWIS, that we can track this in Skyward. Another part of this grant is a school evaluation tool, and that's provided for each school, and I have some data on that we've already had the 3 set evaluations this year at the 3 sites. As part of the PBIS process at the middle school, I'm sure you recognize the picture, the middle school has completed their Pride Matrix, and you have a copy of that in your handouts. Because it would not project well, and you would probably not be able to read it, it's part of your handout. And the acronym PRIDE stands for Prepared, Respect, Integrity, Dependability, and Excellence, and it's on the left side of the matrix, while the locations or environments are across the top of the page. And then in each box are the expected behaviors. And a unique thing about the middle school matrix is that it does include even a column for emergency procedures. The middle school team has met with educational assistants, custodial staff, and cafeteria workers to get input from all staff members involved, not just the classroom teacher. And the middle school has also added 2 positive initiatives. The first one is the PBIS Pride Award for staff. And this consists of a traveling trophy. It's a Northfield football helmet. Apparently it's been used because it's a little beaten up. And a certificate that is awarded to a staff member by another staff member. And this includes all staff. Mr. Gelano awarded the first one to Diane Harris in the Media Center, and she in turn awarded it after her week to Stacy Gustafson, the math teacher, but this week. So that will be a traveling trophy that's going around in middle school for all staff. The other initiative at the middle school is Subs from Subs. So when substitute teachers arrive at the middle school, they are given a slip for each class they will be teaching that day. At the end of each class, they write down a student's name who has been either particularly helpful or particularly well behaved, and those slips go into a drawing for a sub sandwich for the lucky student. And serendipitously, I just happened to be at the middle school today when the student received her sub, and she was quite excited about this. The subs are also told not to use it as a threat or a reward. It's just supposed to be very low key, and at the end of the hour, he or she doesn't even tell the students who is going to be eligible for the award. They just award it and goes into a drawing. This is the SET report, the school evaluation tool. What that involved is someone else from a different school who has been trained in PBIS visited the middle school. Now this occurred in November, and as you recall, our first days of training were in August. And so they looked at these 7 areas: expectations defined, expectations taught, a reward system, violation system, decision making, management, district support, and implementation average. And this is after 2 months of a 2-year process. So while not every bar has achieved something, the middle school has made remarkable progress in this. And it also gives the middle school team some focus now as they go to 2 days of training in March. They can see where they need to do their work. The high school matrix is next in your handouts. And the high school PBIS committee began with the non-classroom areas. And instead of an acronym, the high school is using safe, respectful, and responsible. And the PBIS team took this to PLC groups to discuss it with all the teachers, and they added the student component. They took it to the student council and other student groups, and the students had a chance to comment and add to the matrix. In fact, they added the use compost and recycling appropriately in the cafeteria row to this matrix. The high school staff is participating in kindness to colleagues. As you can gather, the PBIS training indicated that perhaps you should start with staff to get them involved as you move forward to pushing this into the student realm. So they complete a gold slip with the name of a colleague and why they are recognizing this colleague. And these slips are displayed in the office on the window. If you've been past the high school office, you see all those gold slips. And then they also are in a drawing for prizes. So the person who has been recognized and the person who has done the recognizing are both eligible for prizes. The high school SET evaluation is very similar to the middle school, and again, that's to be expected. Again, it occurred in November with only 2.5 months of implementation from the first training date. The ALC matrix is also in your handouts, and they use respect in each of their areas. And one thing the ALC did was to hold a poster contest. So each second period class designed posters to illustrate portions of the matrix. The history class went back to the 80s and did 80s rocker. And the math class used math symbols, what they wanted to add, what they wanted to subtract, what they hoped would be multiplied, and what would be divided, and made large symbols out of tagboard and wrote things on there. And the English class used a play on words and vegetables to design their posters. And they did a very good job and had all the students involved. So the ALC set evaluation is quite impressive. And there are several reasons for this. Obviously, the student population is much smaller at the ALC. Much, much smaller. And because, of course, then their staff is also much smaller. So their entire full-time staff, along with Daryl Keller, attends all the training. So they're able to skip the step of bringing it back and implementing it with the rest of the staff, because their entire staff is their team. As we move forward with the multi-tiered system of support for the secondary level, we're in discussion at Cabinet about how this, and with the principals, about how this support should look and how we can move from the behavior into the academic and coaching and data piece that we will need to do at the middle school and high school. And again, we have one more year of PBIS training in order for that system to be fully implemented. So do you have any questions on the positive behavior intervention supports?
Rob?
One question that actually came up at DPAC last Monday was just that you have pride at the middle school and you have safe, respectful, responsible at the high school, etc., and you've got different things at each of the elementary school buildings. And there was some concern that there be a kind of common language so that as you're moving from, say, Sibley to the middle school to the high school, you know what all these things mean and you're all on the same page rather than different matrices for each building.
Right, and that is a concern. However, we need to keep it fresh for the students too, and I think that is more what the discussion has become, that you don't want them to roll their eyes and go, oh yeah, pride again. You want it to be fresh for them, but yet still have the same expectations. And I know that when we go to the training, we have the ALC, the middle school and the high school there, and they do some back and forth talking about, what are you doing with this and how are you doing that. So that's very helpful to have those three buildings together.
Other questions?
Okay, well then we'll thank you for your time, and we'll turn it over to Mr. Hillman for the last part.
And I just have a couple of closing comments in terms of taking the outstanding reports that we've seen tonight and just kind of share where we're looking at over the next couple of years, specifically some of your questions, Ellen, and as Dr. Richardson answered many of them already, so my report will be very short, much to your happiness, which is good. First of all, aren't these people awesome? I mean, what a great job they have. I don't think any of us had any clue how successful it would be, but I think it's when you see that you've got a vision and you put, as Jim Collins said, the right people on the bus, right? And we've got the right people on the bus here, and that's outstanding. If you remember, just about 2 years ago when Dr. Gary Lewis talked with you about this concept of response to intervention and all the things that had been done to prepare for it, the intent all, I don't really have that froggy of a voice. Maybe I should just, is this better?
Move the next mic over.
I'll move it over. When Gary presented this a few years back, the intent, as you remember, was a transitional process, because the idea was that coaching was going to support our staff to be able to do these kinds of things on their own. And I think that what has happened over the past, the original goal was 2 to 3 years, but then some of the coaching FT, that new FT, the 3 new FT that came out, because you remember, each elementary school had 1 FTE in what we used to call literacy coaching. In fact, Connie was a literacy coach, and I think, and Becky Gainey was one of the literacy coaches as well. So the elementaries had their 3 FTE. We added 3 to that to make the 6. And the intent was that over the period of a few years, what would happen is some of that FTE would transition to the secondary as RTI continued to expand. Well, obviously, we've seen some really great stuff, and a 3rd year is a no-brainer, for the RTI coaches at the elementary school. So there's no question that that is what our recommendation is as we move forward into next year. However, we also have a need at the secondary building. As you heard, we'll be in the second year of PBIS, or Positive Behavioral Intervention and Support training, so not even fully implemented. And there is a need to see how the coaching component will work at the secondary level, because it will be different. At the elementary, very focused on academic. At the secondary, focused very much on the behavioral part of this. So what we're looking at recommending to you for next year is using some of our contingency funding. As you know, we set aside enough funding for 3 FTE of contingency dollars every year. Over the last several years, we've used 2 of those FTE to support the phasing out of the legacy compañeros program. And next year, we'll be in the self-contained classroom for compañeros in grades 1 through 5. So we're looking at recommending using 2 of the contingency FTE next year to support the initial coaching pieces at the secondary level. We think what that will do is it will give us another year to really study what has been the most effective part of RTI at the elementary. How can we help continue to transition that? Another thing that we're learning is that I think we're really in this transitional point now of how we use FTE. And when we used to think of FTE, we used to think solely of classroom teaching and those kinds of pieces, and very valid. However, what you're seeing tonight are things where an FTE strategically placed, or 2 FTE strategically placed, can be a huge springboard that lifts all ships. And so this is a realization that we have had, that if we go back to our core of cognitive coaching and the things that Mr. Lear brought with cognitive coaching several years ago with our high school probationary staff receiving coaching, we've seen some great benefit from that. And what we need to do is we're going to be looking as a cabinet over the next year to say, how can we align all of those pieces and not just look at every FTE as simply a teaching FTE, because it's possible that some of this coaching FTE could have such a tremendous ripple effect, to use your first slide, right, where it impacts all other folks. So we've seen some great results. We believe in what we're doing, but as we move forward, we are going to need to make sure that we honor our commitment to the secondary staff in terms of making sure that there's some coaching opportunities there, and then being very strategic about how we use those coaching FTE as we move forward. And so really the plan is that we believe we need to keep RTI going at the elementary next year, just as it has been for the last 2 years, with some real honest discussions about where we move forward from that, because none of us wanted it or thought it would be something that would be forever. We're going to have to discuss how that vision plays as we move forward, and also supporting the secondary. And we're going to use that contingency piece that we've used. And remember, at the end of every year, the contingency funding goes back into the big pot, and we make decisions on an annual basis again. So we're very excited because we've had more success than we've ever thought was possible. But once we knew the people were in place, it shouldn't shock any of us, right? But at the same time, it gives us an opportunity to have another solid year of looking at what is working, what's the vision in terms of where we want to go, and how do we institutionalize this. That's the key thing. We want to make this part of the daily practice, not just simply some kind of additional piece that we're seeing for a short amount of time. So in terms of, if that's nebulous enough, the intent is to give you an idea of where we're going and how we can honor that commitment that we made to you when we added that FTE several years ago. Does that make sense?
Questions, board members? No?
Seems that this were an Olympic event, this team should be scoring in a gold ribbon. Great job, you've done a good job.
9.5.
Yeah. A 10.
Yeah.
Thank you for mixing going on.
Yes, there is.
Other questions or comments?
I guess just the other comment I would make, and again, I think I've been extremely pleased with the work that all 6 of these folks have been able to provide for us. They are a unique team of individuals. They work very well together in their buildings. I think with Mary's support and tutelage, they've become very good at working together as a group of 6. I think we've really seen what initially we thought would be mainly the problem-solving and intervention process really blossom with looking at all the things we could do with staff development. And, we should, I think, be very clear that if we are going to move and continue to transition this process and have it become an ongoing institutionalized format, we've got to get the staff to the position where they can attack most of the routine kinds of pieces. And then the things that we need to go forward with are, how do we bring new people on board, and how do we support those unique situations that may be above and beyond what we've seen before. So the great thing here is we've got a team that I think can do that. And at the same time, I think we want to make it very clear to you that we want to honor the commitment that we made originally, which is that we would begin to start to move some of that FTE into the secondary. But because the secondary is still in that PBIS training situation for 2014-15, we also believe that it's a time when we can pilot some pieces with contingency FTE before we make a decision as to what the final format of those coaching positions at the secondary. Because even there, I think we will find that there's going to be some fairly significant differences in the way that FTE might be used or implemented at the middle school than the way it's implemented at the high school level. And I think that's fine. It's recognizing the staff that we have. It's recognizing the age of the students and what they need. And it also reflects the fact that I think that at the secondary level, the academic need is very different. You know, we've actually seen the academic need be addressed almost in advance of what we've done at the elementary through things like the academy and the programming there, because we actually saw that need and were able to address that up front. Not cheaply, however. It's a more expensive process to do that, and building principals ahead to make decisions about exactly how those things should move forward. So I think what we want to say to you is we think that we need to give us the third year to really build the transition piece that we need to have in place to take the elementary forward, and to give the secondary a chance to pilot some pieces to figure out how best to use their FTE going forward. But what we've seen, and I would reinforce what Matt said, the key piece here is the fact that what we found is the power of coaching at both levels, and the fact that the right coaches in the right places give us tremendous leverage in terms of supporting the staff in the building and supporting then indirectly all the students in the building going forward. So I think it's a really positive piece. And again, other questions that we can answer for you, but that's kind of the frame in terms of how we're moving this thing forward at this point. We think it makes a great deal of sense, and I think we've got a lot of commitment to try to make it continue to do what we want it to do for all the kids in the district.
Any other questions? No? All right. Well, thank you once again. This was such a thorough report and exciting stuff to hear and get data on, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we are ready to move on to our second item for discussion and report, which is the workforce readiness. Is that Joel leading the charge?
That is Joel is leading the charge there. Just
busy night.
He and Jeff just finished up the 8th grade. You want to give us the two of you give us a quick update on that too as we go through this process?
Great.
Well, I pretty much carried us. No, I'm just kidding. Well, from all anecdotal perspectives, great success. Those of you that have been following kids through the program the last few years know that we're 5 years removed from probably 35 to 40 parents showing up in the evening in the spring for a parent orientation night. And I don't know, do you have the statistical number of how many signed up for conferences tonight?
I would anticipate that we're going to be in the 90% something range. Our teachers will this week indicate which conferences didn't show up or couldn't get scheduled or whatever. And I was hosting conferences for except for about 5 minutes when I was able to walk out and just see what was going on. I was able to mix everything out there, and it was a beehive of activity, and I'm sure that that's not the number of students and parents participating went up, which is what everybody teachers and administrators want is access to those people to share the information. So from what I could tell from my end and the trip through, that's what was happening. So we know there's a lot of people here and all over the district that helped us get to there. So thank you very much. We probably for the high school for hosting because we needed a place big enough to make all this happen. So
We probably had, I think last year we capped at about 300 parents who showed up for parent. And really the influx of parents was 2 years ago we added a link component for the 8th grade students. So the students were at the time in the gymnasium. Today they were in the upper cafeteria. But very exciting. We manipulated parents' schedule in a way that it essentially had Jeff's conference and our orientation on opposite ends of about an hour experience. So they had about 20 to 25 minutes inside to visit some booths in the lower cafeteria, where in previous years we've done about an hour in the auditorium. People are ready to go, so they kind of make their way out, and on their way out they might ask a question or two, but this was 20 to 25 minutes of a captive audience, so real positive buzz in the lower cafeteria. So pleased with how it turned out. And it was interesting because it really came about, I mean, a separate plan, and eventually we just said, wow, make this all a one-stop shop for parents and kids. So I think it's a good model from what we can tell at least now. So we'll do some surveys to gather some feedback, but it was good. So if I blurt out 8th grade orientation information, just bear with me on that. Well, the Workforce Development Initiative I was talking about 5 years ago with orientation, and as I started to look through it and I started creating this timeline, I started reaching back a lot further than the summer of 2013, because it seems like we are well on our way to multiple conversations and multiple kind of pie-in-the-sky plans and visions and opportunities that we're pursuing here in the middle of winter, and so it feels like we should be going back further for the genesis of the conversation. But you have a timeline in your materials that kind of begins in the summer of 2013 when Susie Nakazian from the City Council and members of our staff kind of gathered to really, on a very basic level, pursue the question of what new legislation meant in terms of career and tech ed, and also truly looking at survival of programs. I mean, I'll cut to the chase that I think that there was a real need to figure out ways to stimulate the student body and their parents to say, these are opportunities that are worth pursuing. And now we have this path of relevance related to the new, not only the new legislation, but also just everything that we're seeing in media that speaks to the notion of having a group of students moving through and developing skills that are going to be useful in the workforce. And Jack is here from the EDA, and I appreciate his attendance because he has facilitated a couple of those opportunities. One specific one where Mark Waitala, one of our industrial tech teachers, and I met with Jack and some representatives from the community, as well as from, and it's escaping me now, but it essentially was a...
Bueller.
Thank you, Bueller.
Not Ferris Bueller, either. Bueller.
and looking at ways where we can bridge that gap between what we're doing at the high school level and what the workforce is needing in terms of skilled labor. And statistically, if you look at the data coming out of not only our local entities, but nationwide, the number of jobs and opportunities that are going to be sitting out there, and the way employers are talking about people coming out without the skills necessary to fulfill those jobs, it was really a lot of things were colliding. And there was a point, I would say probably October, November, when it really felt like there were 6 or 7 entities having the same conversation about the same goal and the same motivation. And over the last couple of months, it's really been a enjoyable piece to start bringing that together. So conversations we've been having in our CTE departments, conversations the community has been having to stimulate among the local business community the interest in bridging the gap or creating the partnership. So just to highlight a couple of things on the timeline for you. So essentially working with that legislation, working with this need that our community has, really it was the guiding question of how is it that we can begin to combine our resources, and as it turns out today, kind of triangulate our resources into something that's going to serve students well in terms of preparing them for the work world of tomorrow. And when I say triangulate, what I'm referring to is our local business community, essentially with the support or blessing of the local EDA. And then a new relationship that we've been forging with the folks at South Central. Many of you are aware that we articulate credits and certification through a multitude of our classes with different institutions of higher ed. But we don't have, as we began to look around and explore the conversation with local business folks, it wasn't so much these random credits that almost happened accidentally, but it was beginning looking at career pathways and determining how can we cluster things that we're doing that in a sensical way that get students moving on a very specific path. And we were talking with 8th grade parents tonight, so not only do we hit them over the head with 8th grade orientation, but then we start talking about post-secondary in the same event. But the truth of the matter is that you have supported over the years as a school board a comprehensive educational program here. Meaning, and on the slide that we showed the 8th grade parents, we have 150 different courses available to students every year. What that means is a lot of varied opportunities. So we start piecing those together in ways that make sense, and we can create things that look shockingly similar to an associate's degree, yet here at the high school. And so we approached the folks at South Central with that conversation, and timing as it is, Dr. Annette Parker is the new president at South Central, and she's one of these dynamic people that just kind of says, okay, how do we make that happen? Yeah, we can do that. And it's not closing the door on things, it is at literally blowing the doors off of what we used to know as the parameters of pieces. So we have articulation agreements. That's not new to this process, but what we're beginning to do in terms of dialoguing with the business community in South Central is to say, being very purposeful about saying, what can the community offer, what can the school district offer, and what can South Central offer? Piece those things together, triangulate our efforts so that we're creating opportunities for kids to either be ready to go in the work world when they're done here, or well on their way to a degree or a certification that, with the assistance of perhaps an internship in the local business community or additional classes at South Central or another institution, that we can move kids on that path. And I think that's where we have been missing the space in between preparing our students for those things. Excuse me. Because the articulation process has been great, but if you take an engineering course and it's not connected to 3 or 4 other courses that make sense, much like a college major would, they become a little less useful. And so that's really the exciting piece, that we're beginning to triangulate our efforts in a way that makes sense to kids in a broader scope than just simply random. The piece that I would just like to finish with a highlight is the January 27th Business Leader Summit. And I think, and I may be reading too much into this, but part of what made this event so exciting for me is that it was a 2-hour meeting on a work day with local business leaders.
17 below.
At 17 below zero.
At 7 o'clock in the morning, 17 below zero, out in what felt like a really deserted country road on the way out to College City that morning. In fact, Chris and I can attest to the fact that when we arrived, it was looking rather skeptical that we were going to have a successful event, but the business community came out in droves, and it was a room full of people who were engaged and invested in the conversation of how do we bridge that gap, how do we make our students more prepared to enter the work world. And again, that's a continuum. It's entering the work world truly, in full implementation, but also looking at how do we get them on a path to a higher level of education while preparing them. Because a lot of the data coming out isn't about 18-year-old kids who are going to move into the work world immediately, and that's where they're going to be successful for the rest of their lives. It's getting a springboard to those work areas, as well as furthering their education, because students are going to need advanced higher ed degrees and advanced degrees to continue to be successful. And so that's a component that we're going to continue to dialogue. But the business, and I got so excited about writing this blurb, you notice I didn't even finish my sentence. But the Business Leader Summit, we asked the business leader, we just kind of zipped our lips after our introductory comments. Annette Parker was there to share kind of her vision, but closed our mouths and let the business leaders talk about what their needs were, what the obstacles were in terms of meeting those needs in terms of a qualified workforce, and then the piece that I've left off here and how we could partner with those businesses to better prepare our students for the workforce. And really let them dialogue about that. And initially we had thought about breaking them into groups that were specific to their business areas. But just the way the demographic of the business leaders played out, we let them kind of self-select in 4 groups, had a facilitator from the school staff lead those groups through those 3 questions. And what we envision is a follow-up conversation similar to the summit in terms of those questions, but focused in on specific areas. So health careers, transportation, manufacturing, that will further group them together so that the conversations they're having and the information they're providing us can be much more specific and relevant to those areas. And then we can begin to get at how it is that we can kind of give back. And what does that mean in terms of new course offerings? What does that mean in terms of how we get smarter about offering things that make students better prepared for the work world? That is local, and this is very intentional about working with Jack and the EDA and the other members of the business community that we're talking about the Northfield business community. We recognize some of our students will venture beyond the border of the city limits of Northfield, but we also see a very vibrant business community here that our students can contribute to, and we want them to, at very least, be prepared with the skills that they need to interact with the workforce in the local community. I believe that's where I will wrap up my summary, unless my boss tells me to expand on it.
Talk a little bit about the yellow sheets, and as we talk to the chamber and EDA about, since you gave them a yellow sheet that already had checked, I'm in. I want to be involved in this.
Sure.
Give us some feedback about what data you got back from community businesses about their willingness to be involved.
At the end of the process, we asked them to strongly encourage them to participate with us further in the conversation in terms of being advisory boards, in terms of looking at internships, being speakers for our classes, continuing the conversation, and really I think if I remember correctly, I think 96% of the people that were in attendance filled out the yellow sheet with name, business representation, what their interests were in terms of being a speaker, being an internship, or providing potential internships, furthering the conversation. And so we have emails, contact information for those people. So we're working with that group. And actually, I just communicated with them at the end of last week just to bring them up to date on conversations that are continuing to evolve. One of those being that conversation I'm going to have Friday with the Assistant Vice President of Student Affairs at South Central College that will that will schedule another summit, and I don't know why I've decided that's the word to have a meeting, but it's another summit, and with our CTE staff and their faculty to begin to flush out those pathways in terms of what courses go together in that meaningful way. So we were really excited. It was one thing to bring them all and feed them breakfast and have them engage in that initial conversation. Like I said, I was heartened by the fact that they did so when it was so cold and early morning on a work day, but much even more so intensified that feeling when the number of people that were willing to continue on in that conversation. Specific to that end, and I will just share this from afar, and you'll be able to see this in much more detail once they're fleshed out, but we've begun to draft, and the color coding is very purposeful with South Central. This is how they look at their career clusters. But in talking about those pathways, our Torch folks have begun to look at areas where we can offer those purposeful and meaningful concentrations where students will be on their way to an AA degree or a certification. So what our Torch folks did was looked at the potential degree and then began listing PSEO classes that students have access to, South Central classes that they would have access to, high school articulated classes, and then high school core classes. And so the goal of this, and part of that conversation that we have in the summit with South Central faculty and with Sue Tarnowski, the new assistant dean, the title escapes me on 50% of the time, but is to flesh that out and complete it so students can have access to a document that says, if you're willing to do these classes here, pursue these opportunities in the PSEO or the South Central option, that we're going to group those together, and you're going to have this set of skills or this certification or be on your way to this degree. And part of that conversation will pull in the business community as well in those specific clustering areas to say, okay, what would you like to see here that doesn't exist? Because we can talk all we want about classes that we offer, but it's the business community that's going to say, well, we want to make sure that you're talking about OSHA standards. We want to make sure that you're providing this particular skill, these soft skills, these hard skills. And so that's where that follow-up conversation on a very specific level to those career clusters is going to be useful in that further flushing out and finalization of these career pathways. We've pre-identified 5 pathways with the intention of starting with 1 or 2 that we can just really do correctly and well, and then begin to expand that. I mentioned Annette's kind of go-getter attitude. She came in and saying, "Let's do 5."
Do 5.
And so we'll do 5. So we want to make sure that we're very intentional about doing it in a way that's efficient, effective, and purposeful, and really provides the best opportunity for students to access something, and really it's kind of, those of you that are familiar with how Torch accesses post-secondary for students, it's really about that concept and broadening it out to the greater student population. And at the same time, getting at, and I'm just going to be perfectly honest, getting at making those programs, those CTE programs, more flourishing in terms of the number of students that are accessing them. Because all of the data coming out of the clearinghouse says that we have this huge percentage of students that go off to 2 and 4 year, close to half of whom don't finish in the allotted time that we typically think of as the intended completion time. So we just want to make students go into this thing we call high school with eyes wide open to say, hey, let's pursue this. And I might take an engineering course and decide that a career pathway that includes engineering isn't what I'm up for. But it might be finance, it might be some other aspect of business or industry that really kind of gets their attention, but gets their attention earlier than the second year of a college or university where they've already spent tens of thousands of dollars to determine one thing, and that's the path that they're on isn't the one that they want to continue to be on. So.
I think the other piece, Joel, talk to them a little bit about the follow-up for the groups of businesses and what's the plan there once you've met with South Central to flush out the pathways. How will we reconnect with businesses?
What we will do, and we have them all on another one of our Torch. Torch is really a helpful entity, I have to tell you. The Torch folks have organized the information that we got from the yellow data sheets so that we can communicate via email to all of the people that are interested in continuing the conversation. So as I mentioned on the timeline in March and April, and that's really just tentative based on what we can determine is a fair timeline for Sue Tarnowski, who's new in the position. So part of Friday is going to be about, here's what we've done over the last few months, and here's what we'd like to do as a partnership with your institution. So March and April to have a really kind of a follow-up, I would call it a round 2 of that workforce summit that we had in January, where we take the people who are interested in furthering the conversation and concentrate them in their career areas, in their business areas, and so that the questions that we're asking specific to their needs, their obstacles, and how we can partner, really translate that directly into that discussion of what those pathways look like in terms of our courses, in terms of any potential internship offerings that the community has, which they've already stepped forward in a couple of ways that have already said we're willing to provide these internships. So that's very exciting to see those kind of coming across the bow. And then so from that South Central conversation, coupled with the conversation we have with the business leaders in those specific clusters, they'll really be clustered in those pathway clusters. So it's really going to be 2 parallel things moving along the same track. And then once we have those 2 conversations, we can say, okay, what does the finished product look like? And then share that back with our students and our parents so that they know what new opportunities are laid out in front of them.
And the very positive piece right now is that the Chamber is very supportive of this piece. John Stahl, who's the current executive for the Chamber, is extremely supportive, has already reached out to Maldonado and several other entities to say, how could we begin to put these pieces together? We've already got, as Joel said, some commitments from businesses either to provide internships, to provide job shadowing, to do the other kinds of pieces. So that I think we've really got this piece moving forward. I guess I would frame it, if you think about what we've been doing for years for kids in the 4-year college track, in terms of providing AP courses. The idea of saying you take an AP course in high school, you get a 3 or higher in terms of a score. Not only do you get a grade as part of your credits to graduate from high school, but you get potential credit in college that helps you to take up your first year or your first year and a half in terms of college courses. The format for this we see as being very similar with the idea with articulation agreements. What we create is an option where students could take courses here that would be considered for college credit, and that matching that up with credits that they would need to take either through PSEO or at South Central, they would be able to put those pieces together, get themselves a year down the road or more towards a 2-year degree to get them in a position where they are going to be able to move more rapidly and more successfully into a career, which will be a high-paying career, which will be a solid career for the future. But it will also focus on the fact that not every kid needs a 4-year degree. And that's really something, we only have begun to start hearing again in about the last year or so. I think we talked before about the fact that unfortunately we had about a 10-year period where at the federal level and even to some extent the state level, we almost tried to kill career and technical education. It was almost like we weren't going to need this need for people who were highly skilled technical folks, that all we needed was 4-year college graduates. The reality now is people are beginning to step back and say that's crazy, that really we need the options on both sides. So I think the powerful piece here is that we've got, I think, some real momentum going forward. And I think we've got some people that have some real commitment. And as Joel said, Torch has been very instrumental in this because they're ready to put students into some of the internship pieces and to give some live support to make that happen, just like they've done the same thing when we've had kids taking PSEO or AP classes at the high school. So we've got some folks that already know how to do that I think are going to be able to help us. And as Joel said, the change that's occurred at South Central is it's night and day within this last year with Annette coming on board. Just a total change in terms of what's the role of the community college, in terms of what role they play and how they interact with local school districts. So I think we're in a really good place going forward with this. So what we wanted to do tonight is just kind of share where we are. I think we're really excited about the possibilities. We really want to thank both the EDA and the Chamber for their great support on this, because we know that in terms of making that connection, we really need the support from EDA and the Chamber to do that. And what we want to say to them is that we are wanting to be a partner with them in terms of building a quality system that will hopefully give us students that are really prepared to be successful in the businesses within our community and beyond, depending on what they want to do. So I think Joel is ready to answer your questions.
Questions? Julie?
I just had some comments. First of all, thank you for all your work on this. And that business summit there was a number of us there. It was absolutely amazing. And it was, again, you speak to the momentum and the timeliness of all this. And I don't think, you've tried to say it in a couple ways, Annette Parker, but when you hear her speak and the credentials that she has, and she's absolutely amazing, and I think it's going to be a central piece to the success of this, without a doubt. And you touched on it, but what I heard in the breakout group that I was in is the importance of the soft skills. And so I looked to Jeff with the student-led conferences and those things, and it was several individuals within that group talking about bringing in people who really lack basic interview skills and just what it takes. They might have the skills, but they can't go to an interview and sell themselves. And so, we talk about soft skills, but I don't think we can really underestimate the importance of that, in addition to, having obviously the technical skills as well. But that breakout group was really good, and I think as people were leaving, they were thinking, I heard thank yous, I'm sure you guys did too, and the businesses just being really appreciative of the fact that we were pulling it together. And as the liaison to the Northfield Chamber of Commerce, I can tell you we're very energized by that and feel like it's going to provide really good value to the chamber members in terms of this conversation and what they'll see as value, and that they're really excited to be a part of this.
Cool. Thanks, Drew.
Other comments or questions? I had a question. Timing. How quickly can this 5 tracks get on board? Is this a year-long vision, 2 years? Is it?
I wouldn't say 2 years. I would, and really, I'd love to come back after even Friday, to be quite honest with you. I think Friday will give us a sense of how quickly we can pursue the discussion with the faculty at South Central, which will then trigger the follow-up, summit with the local business community. So, my hope would be that if we were able to wrap up this school year and really have something that's articulated that we can work on over the summer, that puts something in place that further flushes out, the pathway model, whether it be one pathway or 2 pathways, so that the students, I said, be watching for more information about the notion of these career pathways to our incoming 9th graders. So my hope would be that we have something very tangible to offer them, as well as our 10th through 12th graders. It's not something that's just for the incoming students, but certainly so they can begin looking. And even if it's about juniors and seniors looking at a couple of years of that process, they're still going to be down the road, and they're going to see it as like I said, it's going to be packaged like a college major would be in a lot of ways. And then again, to the notion of the opportunities of internships around the community, I think really speaks to a large percentage of our students that that may see that as something that they didn't expect to get out of their high school experience. And so those 2 pieces, I just say those next 2 meetings are going to be critical to us being able to say, let's accelerate this so that we're able to have something in place as a tangible, understandable plan for the students moving into the fall. They're registering now, of course, so they're not registering for those pathways, but certainly can begin to look at, well, how do I modify what I've selected, and how do I plan even for next year, so that I'm pursuing those. And some of those classes are going to be on their schedule by accident, because we are looking at the core very purposefully. As Jack would attest, or the business community would attest, you still need the math skills, the science skills. So it's not that we're saying we take this completely alternate route of education, contrary to the core. The core is going to be a very integral part of that. So some of those pieces will be part of what the students have chosen already, but then we can flush that out to say, in addition to that, here are the other pieces that you want to consider in those pathways.
That's terrific. Great.
That's exciting. Very exciting.
Thank you for keeping us informed, and good luck on Friday then. All right, we are ready to move on to our first item for individual action, which is the Director of Technology proposal.
And basically the information on this was in your packet. Again, it's the same information we've shared at our last 2 sessions. And at this point, my recommendation to you is to move forward with the selection of a Director of Technology going forward for the 2014-15 school year, based on the recommendation that we've provided.
So board members, since this is an item for individual action, before we talk about it, I would like to see a motion on the table.
So moved.
Moved by Julie to support the superintendent's recommendation.
Correct.
Second.
Seconded by John. Discussion? I had one comment, I guess, and then if people had questions too, that I just took note when the RTI coaches were giving the presentation. 2 of the, one was a challenge and one was some thinking to the future, were technology-driven pieces. The data in one spot challenge, and then the thinking about how to disseminate it with teachers, and that it would be of value to have a website. So it just struck me that there's a program that could really, and we don't think of this position maybe as impacting the elementary schools, because we think about the iPads being mostly at the middle school and high school, but that was clearly 2 needs that they had. So.
Yeah, and it's very clear that this proposal is a K-12 support. in terms of not only the instructional side, but also the technology integration side of the process. So we heard very clearly from our building principals the importance of having this have an impact on students and staff at all levels, not just at the level where right now we've got the greatest implementation of iPads.
Any questions, Rob?
Well, I was just wondering, because last January we were told that this would be, that the restructuring would be cost neutral if there were any other staffing needs, which is not the case. And I'm just wondering about any possible future staffing needs that would result from this hiring. Will this person have the authority to hire other staff, or I mean, what do you envision? Because I'm worried about something that, I mean, the iPads are, you know, $500,000 a year, and now we're adding 86,611. So what else might we be adding to this cost?
Well, I believe that this particular individual would, of course, have the opportunity to make a recommendation in terms of if they felt they saw there was some kind of need, but it would go through the standard process of, you know, first of all, working with me and working with the cabinet to see if there was a true need. I think that we feel that overall we have the appropriate amount of technical staffing, you know, in terms of on the technology side. I think we have an appropriate level of media specialist staffing, and that those positions continue to evolve more toward a technology and information literacy side. And so, could I predict what's going to happen a few years down the road? I can't. But at the same time, I do think that I don't see the need for additional staffing in terms of on the technical side or on the media specialist side moving forward. We're one of the few districts that has a full-time media specialist in each building. You can't go very far and not find a district that doesn't have that, where you're having one person that's covering either the entire district or several buildings at a time. So from the crystal ball that I have right now, Rob, I would not anticipate seeing that we would have a need for additional technology staffing. And part of that is because we have our administrative team that is deeply understanding of how technology works in their area. You know, as far as I know, I'm not going anywhere, and I'll be here to help that particular individual and others. Mary Hansen, in her role of teaching and learning, has a strong technology background. Our building principals, you know, continue to demonstrate their understanding of that. So I think we have the rest of the support in place. What we're looking for is that champion, you know, that person who can tie all those pieces together.
So the second part of Rob's question about the iPad cost, there's general fund and then there's capital.
Correct.
So the re-upping the lease in the future, is that continued to be a general fund piece, or is that?
Well, by next year, this year we're on the path to trying to have 100% of the actual lease of the iPads, which is roughly $333,000 a year. That's what the actual hardware cost is. And so in terms of moving forward, I believe that next year we'll fund that entirely out of capital. This year we're going to be just about 50% out of capital, just like we said, you know, in a several-year process. The next lease, I don't know. I had some very interesting meetings last week with, I'm not sure that if we were to do another lease, I'm not sure it would be from a computer company. I think it might be from a phone company, because we're starting to see the ability to do some things through E-rate that could potentially reduce that cost and provide cellular access to students anywhere. That just based on a vision that we had with a couple of meetings with some cell phone companies last week. I think it's changing very fast. Right now, we anticipate that will come out of capital. Moving forward, 3, 5, 7 years down the line, the change is going to accelerate. And what we want is to have someone who's on top of that kind of change all the time.
And I think it's a good question, Ellen, in terms of, I think that we need to think about the segregation of the cost of the hardware from the cost of this individual, because in terms of the hardware side, our focus has always been to move 100% of the hardware side, as well as the ongoing infrastructure, the web capability, all the other pieces, moving that so that 100% of that is covered out of the operating capital budget, which again cannot be used to buy teachers, can't be used to buy the traditional kinds of pieces. So our sense is we're on track to make that piece happen. And again, I think doing what we've done with the leasing process assures that as we get to the end of the useful life of the equipment that we have the potential again to re-up with brand new equipment that is in the best position to move us forward, and at a cost that we believe will be very similar to the cost that we currently have. So,
if not less.
If not less, because if we look at Moore's Law,
yep,
that basically every 18 months,
18 months,
the memory doubles and the price cuts in half. And there's nothing at this point that seems to be stopping that from going forward. So really, again, with the frame of this position, it's really taking someone that's going to be able to continue to monitor the technical side under the able work of the folks that are currently technicians, but also to provide direct support to building staff and building administrators in terms of implementing the instructional side of the technology in the most positive way. And that's where we see the power of this position, is having someone that takes that on as a full-time job.
We'll also make sure we can get someone to make sure the microphones work properly. No, I'm just kidding. That's
well,
not a skill.
I was going to say, we don't need. We also again are very conservative in terms of the expenditures on technology. How old is this technology anyway?
It's a very timely glitch.
Yeah, I think the other piece too on the general fund side, we saw a lot of collaboration this summer between teaching and learning and the funds that we set aside for iPads, and we saw quite a bit of instructional material that we might have envisioned taking from what you allocated for us to get the iPad initiative going, actually coming from the regular curriculum cycle. Mm-hmm. And I think we're going to continue to see that merge as time goes on, and that's where some districts have said they would see that cost savings, is when they are truly starting to use what the old general fund stuff would be, is the curriculum. We're not blissful enough to think that happens overnight. There are people who promised that would happen overnight. We did not, because we knew better.
Okay. Thanks, Matt. Other questions? Julie?
Well, I just had a comment, and I think we've sort of touched on it, and really, in my view, that it justifies really the importance of this position, because we're talking about this huge investment we've made. And I think to be good stewards of that investment, we need to keep moving forward. And I think that we need that leadership that's going to have that singular focus to continue to move us forward, to transform teaching and learning. And, the rate of change is happening so quickly out there, and that person is really going to have to keep a pulse on that, so that we are protecting this investment and we're continuing to move forward. And I think without this leadership position, we won't be able to do that. So, I am full support of this position.
Others? No? All right. We have a motion and a second on the table to support the superintendent's recommendation, the Directory of Technology proposal, to approve the position as presented. All those in favor say aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right. We are ready to move on to the items in the consent grouping. I'll remind board members there were additional items at personnel from your table file. Is there anything wishes to pull from the consent grouping? All right. I would ask for a motion to approve the consent grouping. Moved by Noel. Second. Seconded by Ann. All those in favor of approving the consent grouping say aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right. We have two items for information. First is guaranteed lunch, and I know that Dr. Richardson had some information he was going to share with us.
Yeah, and just briefly to share with you, as I'm sure most of you are aware, we had a situation where folks from the, I want to make sure I got the name correct, the Mid-Minnesota Legal Aid Legal Services Advocacy Project did basically a survey in Minnesota, and it really was reflective of the fact that many of you may have seen within the last several months a national news story about students being refused hot lunch in Utah. And so the Legal Aid Society basically determined that they were going to do a very similar kinds of survey here in Minnesota for the purpose of determining what would happen if a student did not have the money in their account to be able to get a lunch. And, unfortunately, it saw some very different responses from across the state, all the way from the response that we gave, which was we guaranteed a student a lunch regardless of whether they had the resources at that particular moment to pay for it or not, to some other districts who flatly said they would refuse to allow a student to eat, or that they would give a student an alternative lunch option. So, I would just share with you and talk with Pam. And again, Pam has really led the effort on this piece, because I think she was very concerned about making sure that we were being very supportive of students, making sure that students were not denied. And so the practice that's been in place since she has been here is that if a student has a negative balance or zero balance, is to go ahead and feed them the regular meal, and also, of course, to inform them that they need to bring the money to follow up and pay for that. Also, with the process that we've had in place, again, with the extra technology that we now have in place for the lunch program, we have the ability to do automated calls and emails to parents, so we can remind a parent that if the lunch balance is less than $5, they get an automated call that says your child's lunch balance is less than $5. You need to put money into the account. And what Pam has said to me is that has been very effective. That although we do have students that sometimes are in that situation, that typically this kind of a calling system and basically the opportunity for the parent to come in and pay for it when they can has allowed us to gain or to regain most of the dollars that are in place. We do, however, also provide an Angel account that's available, because we do in fact have some students who are just not able to cover the cost, and basically we have through that Angel account the ability of the district to cover lunches for students who the parent is not able at that particular point in time to cover the cost. We do not provide an alternate meal. Some districts say, well, you get a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and a glass of milk, and we do not do that. Basically, a student is able to get that piece. The other thing is that Pam has really worked hard in terms of the breakfast program, so that we also are able to provide a quality breakfast program for students, so that has also been supportive in terms of being able to meet students' needs. So I think the unfortunate kind of negative press that was out there really didn't touch us, because of the fact that I think our child nutrition program has been really supportive and understanding. I'd also share with you that when you think about that Angel account, I know some people are thinking, well, where does that come from? Basically, St. Paul Lutheran Church covers a portion of that. Excuse me? St. Peter's Lutheran. Okay. I'm reading Pam's notes, so sorry about that. That's Pam with St. Peter's. Okay. So St. Peter's Lutheran Church covers a portion of that. And we also have school staff in buildings that cover a portion of that, and sometimes we even have parents that write checks and put into that Angel account. So through the generosity of St. Peter's and through the generosity of staff and parents, we have been able to sustain that Angel account over the years. And so that's also been a very, very positive piece for us. So at this point, our intention will be to maintain that approach. We think it's the right thing to do for kids. I would share with you, I'm a little concerned in terms of where I think this may be headed at the state level, because at the state level, what the governor has really proposed is just that 100% of the cost of reduced price meals will be paid for by the state. And that's a fairly significant bill. That's money that comes out of funding that would be available for other programming. If I could encourage, and I probably, as I talk to both Kevin and David over the next month or so, will be encouraging them to consider instead something more like a statewide Angel account, where they could put dollars into that account, and that districts at the end of the year determine the dollars that either parents have not been able to pay back or that their own Angel accounts have not been able to cover, and that the state would then reimburse districts for that portion. I'm very concerned, and I think I think there's a pride in being able to help yourself. And I think we do have parents that, although they may be in a tough situation in a particular month or in a particular week, they want to pay their way. And so I am concerned about kind of the logic of saying, well, no, they shouldn't have to pay anything, and they should never pay anything. I'm also concerned because I think that puts a new cliff. So now if you're at 185% of poverty, you pay nothing. At 185.5% of poverty, you pay full price lunch. So I guess that's just an editorial comment as we kind of go forward with this piece. But just wanted you to be assured, our policy is we guarantee that kids get lunch. We handle the situation in terms of using the automated system, other methods to remind kids that they need to get dollars into their account if they're available. And if they aren't, if they have a reason at that point in time when they can't, then we're going to provide through the Angel account a support that will cover that lunch cost.
Matt?
And you always need to take the chance to trumpet Pam's program, because these kids aren't just getting the school lunch that you remember. It is a high quality, very nutritious lunch with choice. And if you've not had a chance to eat in one of our cafeterias, I encourage you to set up an appointment to come and do that, because it is very different when you go into especially go to our high school cafeteria, the choices that kids have. It's not just what you think of as the traditional school lunch. Pam and her crew have done an excellent job of providing a real high quality experience for kids. And for many kids, it's probably the most nutritious meal of the day that they'll have. So I think they're not just getting a lunch, they're getting something that's really good for them. I think that's an important piece to point out.
Right.
John?
While she grew the fund balance. That's a good thing.
And also is continuing to grow the fund balance.
Well, I know it's a different lunch program because my daughter doesn't seem to know what a pizza burger is. But, what is there a point in there where we help parents who are struggling to pay for the lunches and help them apply for the free or reduced lunch price program instead of...
Yeah, I was going to say yes. Every single year there's an individual letter that's sent out to families. Pam and Janice and Lori are all supportive, so if a family comes in and says, I need help being able to fill this out, or I need some support in how to complete the application, they do so. What we tend to find is that elementary parents are more willing to do this, and that unfortunately sometimes at the secondary level, for whatever reason, students don't want to continue that process. So our numbers, and that would be very similar in any district I've worked in over the last 40 years, you're going to find that as they get into high school, you're going to have less kids that are going to be applying for free and reduced price lunches. But yes, there are multiple opportunities where Pam and staff work with kids to make sure that if they're eligible, that they get an application in and they get it completed, and they get because Pam is actually responsible for reviewing the applications and determining students' eligibility. So They work very hard to get that particular piece done, and we advertise that every fall as we go forward so that parents know it's out there.
So my question was, if during the year there's an issue.
Yes.
It's running short.
Yeah, and obviously that's a piece that oftentimes comes when a parent contacts us back and says, I'm not really able to do this right now. Then they're checking in with them to say, have your circumstances changed? Would you be in a position now where you'd want to fill this particular piece out, because we have the ability then to provide you a free or reduced price meal. So I think that's done on a very regular basis if a circumstance changes. And we've seen a lot of that, obviously, since 2008 and kind of the recession at that point, where we saw a lot more people that have kind of come forward and have taken that piece on, understanding that that's available for kids and for parents now.
Other questions?
Okay. The other piece we want to talk to you about is we do want to set up a negotiation strategy session after the board meeting on March the 10th. And again, the purpose of that is, as you think about it, is we now have all the other groups. We did teachers over this last year. Now we're ready to do the negotiation for all 14 or 15 other groups, both BMS certified and non-BMS certified groups. And we need to talk with you about appropriate strategy moving forward with that process. So we'd like to go ahead and get that set for immediately following the Monday, March the 10th school board meeting.
Good.
Okay.
All right.
Then the only other thing, if I can take just a minute to share, just with the contacts I've had from various community members over the past week with 2 more days of no school, again, I think to reinforce what I think you as board members already know, and that is that between the bus company and myself, we do check roads, we look at multiple forecasts. We're out there typically, if there's any kind of snow or those conditions, we're out driving those roads, typically starting at 4. We always try to make a.m. and we always are trying to get that decision made before 5 a.m. What I have noticed, unfortunately, as we've kind of seen this winter unfold with the governor's decision, the first closure, to close it 3 days in advance. In other words, to close all the schools on Friday for an event that was going to happen on Monday. We now have more community members that are thinking that every closure decision should be made a day in advance, or 2 days in advance, or 3 days in advance. And all I would say to you, as someone that's been doing this for a few years, I have had as many situations where the forecast was wrong as when the forecast was right. And when we do it in the morning, early, I've got the best handle on the most up-to-date forecast. I've got the actual road and weather conditions to look at. I think we make less mistakes and we do the right thing more of the time. And so I would just say to you, if you hear from parents or others, well, why isn't that decision being made the night before or the afternoon before? That's the reason, is that I want to try to take advantage of the best and most up-to-date forecast, the best information, and the best actual driving of the actual roads where kids and buses are going to be. So that's really the approach that we've tried to take over time. So that has just kind of come up in this last several weeks, because I think of kind of being prepped to do it differently. And I guess I'm trying to encourage parents that that's not necessarily a good strategy. And I also hope that in the winter, as we are currently experiencing, people need to be prepared on any day that you could have a weather event that would require you to do something, that we shouldn't be looking at saying to parents, every time we're going to give you 2 or 3 days advance notice, because it just isn't possible, and it's not wise, I don't believe. And at 4 days, you also understand we've just triggered the first day for staff to be back. So they now will have an official work day on Monday, June the 9th. And we are working right now to make sure that we have a very high-quality activity set for them to do on that particular day. I know Mary's already thinking about, and Matt is already thinking about, some of the things that they'd like to do in terms of professional development on that day. So just wanted to share that with you briefly. Thank you.
Very good. So board members, future meetings, we only have one meeting in March, March 10th, followed by a closed session, and then on to Monday, April 14th. Hopefully we won't be talking about school snow closures. All right. With that, I would ask for a motion for adjournment. Moved by Noel.
Second.
Seconded by Ann. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting, aye. Aye. Opposed? Meeting is adjourned.